This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Welcome again to everyone, all the Torah Anytime viewers, to another Pilpul on the Parasha, where we like to take a sugya from this week's Parasha and go into it a little bit more in depth. This week's Parasha, Bez Hashem, is Parasha Shlach. So Parasha Shlach has a few different topics in it, and at the end of the Parasha it talks about the mitzvah of tzitzis, and it mentions the mitzvah of Techeiles. So what I wanted to do is discuss, it's a topic that I've never given Shear on in the past. We know that there is a Techeiles nowadays that many people wear, and they have proofs, and people feel that it's not proofs, back and forth, whether it is the right Techeiles, it's not the right Techeiles. I'm not going to get into that part of the sugya of the proofs of whether it's Techeiles or not. We're not going to really get into that part, but we know that there are a lot of questions from the sugyas, from the Gemaras and Chazal and the Rishonim against today's Techeiles, and those that are in favor of today's Techeiles, what's called the Murex Trunculus, they have answers to those questions. What I'd like to do is, I'd like to go through 14 of the questions and the answers. Now, you all realize, this is not a surprise to anybody, that all the questions that those that are against today's Techeiles, all the questions that they ask on today's Techeiles, not one of those questions does the other side that feels it is the correct Techeiles, by none of them do they say, we just don't have an answer, you got us, Of course not. They have an answer to every single question. But those that ask the questions feel that those answers are not good answers. So what we're going to do, I'm going to try not to take any sides, just going to simply say the questions and the answers, where the ones that ask the kashas are coming from, and they feel they're right, and where those that give terutzim, what their possible teretz is, and why they feel they are right. And like anytime you're going to have a list of 14 kashas and terutzim, some kashas are going to be better than others, some terutzim are going to be better than others, some kashas are going to be better than the teretz, some of the terutzim are going to be better than the kasha. So good. So you will all decide which ones you like better, the kashas or the terutzim. That's your job. That's not my job. We're going to go through the questions and the answers, and there are going to be things that we're going to leave out. I'm not covering the entire topic of Techeiles. I've listened to many shiurim on the topic of Techeiles from those that are against Techeiles, some of which are on TorahAnytime.com. Amazing shiurim about Techeiles, against the Techeiles, and there are many shiurim that I've listened to that are for the Techeiles. A lot of the shiurim bothered me very much, because those that, a lot of times you get the impression that the Talmud Chacham giving the Shear already comes with an agenda, that it's for sure the right Techeiles, it's for sure the wrong Techeiles, and then they purposely leave out some of the kashas that are very strong kashas against it, or they purposely leave out some of the terutzim, even though there are terutzim. I feel that they should say both the kasha and the teretz and explain why the teretz is not a good teretz, or why the kasha is not a good kasha. And I want to come, open to everything. So with that introduction, let's go to the 14 kashas that we're going to talk about. And I've always felt that the questions on today's Techeiles, I always felt could be categorized into two categories. Number one is against Techeiles in general nowadays. Whatever the Techeiles is, even if it wasn't a Murex Trunculus, maybe let's say it was something else, the Cuttlefish or something else. So it's a kasha in general on having Techeiles today. We're going to have 6 kashas like that, and then we're going to have 8 kashas on specifically the Murex Trunculus, being the Techeiles. How could it be the right Techeiles? We'll go through it. Maybe some of those 8 kashas is not going to be specifically on your Murex. Maybe it really could have been categorized in the first type of category. Not important really so much which category it falls into, but what I tried to organize is first questions on Techeiles in general today. So, kasha number 1. The Sfarim and the Gedolim and the Poskim discuss, do we need a Masaira for a mitzvah. We know, I think we gave a shear on this one time on Torah Anytime, is turkey kosher. So there's a halacha that for birds, we need a certain Masaira to know what's the correct translation of a bird, and therefore that it's not one of the 24 listed in Shmini, Re'eh, that it's kosher. So what about for a mitzvah? Do you need a certain Masaira that this is the right way we're doing a mitzvah? So it's well known that there's two versions of what exactly the Beis HaLevi said about this. One version that the Soloveitchik family have accepted in their family, that what the Beis HaLevi said was that even if the Techeiles that we have nowadays, obviously the Beis HaLevi wasn't talking about the Miras Trunculus, maybe he's talking about the Cuttlefish that the Radzina Rebbe felt was the correct Techeiles. He said, even if you think that it's right, but it's wrong, because there's no Masaira on it, and you need to have a positive Masaira on a certain item. And we don't necessarily have a Masaira on, let's say, the Cuttlefish. That the Cuttlefish existed for many, many years. We always knew about it, and we don't have a Masaira that is the right Techeiles. That's one version of what the Beis HaLevi said. Number two, the Radzina Rebbe, Gershon Henoch Leiner, he has printed in his sefer from an anonymous correspondence with someone who was close to the Beis HaLevi, and he says from the Beis HaLevi that he's against the Cuttlefish because the fact that we always knew about the Cuttlefish, and yet our grandfathers never used it, so that's a Masaira against it. That alone is a Masaira against it, but the Beis HaLevi says, according to this version, that if we would find a Techeiles that is the correct Techeiles, that we don't have a Masaira against it, so then we would have to wear it, says the Beis HaLevi. But the fact that we had the Cuttlefish for all these years, and then and we didn't use it, and we had access to it, so that's a Masaira against it. Those are the two versions of what the Beis HaLevi said. I heard in a shear, I didn't speak to Rabbi Feivel Cohen, but the way I heard was that Rabbi Feivel Cohen took off a year to learn in Eretz Yisrael by Rav Elyashiv, and after he came home, he still had correspondence with him, and he sent letters to Rav Elyashiv, and Rav Elyashiv sent back, and he said that you could even print the following letter, that the first way is not right, says Rav Elyashiv. The first version is not right. He says, why do you need a positive Masaira on a mitzvah? If the archaeological facts show it to be true, then it's legitimate. So, and we find there's a Gemara Bava Basra, Ayin Gimel Amud Beis, that discusses a story about finding the tzitzis from the Mesei Midbar. So you see that you could find, based on what you find from from previous years, that could help decide what is the correct mitzvah. There's a machlekes between Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam, of course, in regards to tefillin, and they found by the Kever Yecheskel, like the tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam. So the question is what that proved. Does that prove that Rabbeinu Tam is right in the order of the parashas, or maybe Fakeret, it was in Geniza, so maybe that proves that Rashi is the right. But where they're basing on archaeological facts. Also rice, we know rice we make a mezainis. The Gemara Brachas Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph. So the Magen Avram discusses this. How do we know that rice is mezainis? Maybe really it's not rice, it's something else. So it's based on the test of the Gra. And there's no Masaira of what's rice and what's mezainis, but if you do, the Gra did the tests and he felt that this is accurate based on what based on what the Gemara explains and based on the Mishnayos in Bav Metzia. So based on that, he was able to decide. There's an interesting Gemara about the tzitz, that it says Kodesh Lashem. Is it on one line or is it on two different lines? The Sukkah Daf Hey Amud Aleph. So the Gemara over there says, based on Me'ilo Yud Zayin Amud Beis, that they saw in the Roman treasury that it's on one line. That Kodesh Lashem is written on one line. The Rambam in Klei Mikdash Tes Aleph says it's on two lines. So Zakta Kesel Mishnah has a teretz. No, really the Rambam paskins that really the halacha is that it's on two lines, like the Chachamim, but b'di'evet it's okay with one line, and sometimes they made it like that on purpose. Let's say the different size koyanim, a big koyan, a small koyan, but we're all, so the Kesel Mishnah has a teretz, but we're all reckoning with what we find from based on archaeological facts, or nothing to do with archaeology per se, but something from science, from previously. And so they're able to assume that you don't need to have a specific Masaira if it existed, and if the item existed and we didn't use it, so then that could be a Masaira against it. But you don't need a positive Masaira. So that is a Kasha and a Teretz. That's number one in general. How can it be that we have Techeiles nowadays? Do we need a Masaira or not? And those that feel that it's not a problem, so those that feel that you can't have it, they claim because it's not a good Masaira. We don't have a Masaira on the Cuttlefish. We don't have a Masaira on the Xanthina. We don't have a Masaira on the Murex trunculus. But those that feel that no, it could be the right Techeiles, they say that no, it's the second version of the Beis Levi that's correct, and supposedly the way this goes is that Rabbi Yashiv said like that as well, that as far as this is concerned, you don't need a positive Masaira as long as it makes sense and you don't have a negative Masaira against it. They always had access to the Cuttlefish. For hundreds and hundreds of years, we didn't have access to the Murex trunculus. Now, we're able to get access to it, so they're claiming that, okay, so we don't need a positive Masaira, and we don't have a negative Masaira against it, because it's not like our fathers had it and didn't use it, so they feel that that's not a problem with the Masaira. But again, that's Kasha number one, that hey, where's the Masaira? And the teretz to that is that no, you don't need a Masaira, as long as it's not as long as we don't have it, and we didn't use it, we're allowed to assume that maybe that would be the right one. And again, like I said before, they feel that it is the right one, and they have proofs and back and forth. It is proofs, it's not proofs, not for now, but that's question number one, as far as what the Beis Levi said in regards to Masaira. That's Kasha number one, and Teretz number one. Number two, the Arizal says, they bring from Shara Kavanas, the Arizal says that the mitzvah of Techeiles was only when the Beis HaMikdash stood. And that's a kasha in general, on not just the Murex trunculus, whatever the Techeiles is going to be. It's only when the Beis HaMikdash stood. We don't have a Beis HaMikdash nowadays, unfortunately, and therefore, how could it be that we have Techeiles and we shouldn't have the mitzvah of Techeiles? The Baum Kasha, what's going to be with the Arizal? How can you go against the Arizal statement? So, those that feel that it is the correct Techeiles, so what their answer is the following. That they say, well, anyways, you have to know what the Arizal means. It only applies when the Beis HaMikdash stood. We have Rabbanim Savroi, we have Amoraim, we have Rabbanim Savroi, maybe even Go'inim, that talk about the mitzvah of Techeiles, and that they had the Techeiles, and they still wore the Techeiles. They had it, they did use it, they did do the mitzvah of Techeiles after the Beis HaMikdash already was destroyed. So, anyways, you need to know what exactly did the Arizal mean. A lot of times we don't know what exactly the Arizal means. They bring from Rabbi Yaakov Hillel, who I think was on the cover of Mishpacha magazine recently. So Shai Sechuvas Vayoshav Hayam, that the derech of the Arizal is to say things al pisaid, and even if it's not, and only if it's said like in a derech hayra, does it mean to to act based on those statements. Otherwise, stam sentences, we don't know exactly what the Arizal meant, and they're claiming that, listen, anyways, you have to know what the Arizal means because the Metzias is not like that. It definitely existed after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. So that's how they get out of that, seemingly, clear statement from the Arizal. So that's their teretz. Next, the number 3 in Bamidbar Rabbah in Parasha Shlach, this week's Parasha, and the Timekuma in this week's Parasha, it says that the Techeiles was nignaz. Techeiles was nignaz. So now, that's a stark Akasha, because nignaz means that it was buried away, treasured away, not treasured, but buried away. It's in Geniza. It's like we use shemis. It's like Geniza, and it's gone. When we put things in shemis, when we put things in Geniza, so it's gone forever. We're not taking it out. It's not temporary. It's not at a temporary time. It's forever. It's going to be there forever. So how could we have any Techeiles nowadays if the Medrash, this is way before the Arizal, this is the Medrash already, that says that Techeiles was nignaz. So those that answer, and they feel that the Techeiles could be the right Techeiles, is the right Techeiles, they feel, so their answer is the following, that the word nignaz doesn't have to mean forever. It could mean forever, but it could also mean temporary. It could just mean nishtakach. temporarily, maybe for a very, very long time, but it could be temporary. There's a Tanchuma in Parashas Miketz that says that for the 22 years that Yosef was in Mitzrayim, Ruach HaKodesh was nignaz from Yaakov. Right? That's a famous Chazal, but it says nignaz. Uses the Lashon nignaz, even though it's only temporary for those 22 years. They also bring in Bereishis Rabbah, Parashas Miketz, that when there was a famine in Mitzrayim, so Parai was ganaz the tfuah, and everybody was upset. You're keeping it for yourself. And he was ganaz the tfuah, but Yosef, he supported everybody like a shepherd supports his flock. So Parai was ganaz the tfuah, but not forever, just till it was time for breakfast, till it was time for lunch, and then supper for himself. He was ganaz it, and he kept it for himself. But again, they're claiming that, you see, the word geniza again can mean temporary. The man fell double on Erev Shabbos, and it says in Parashas B'Shalach, the eskol ha'oidev henichu lachem limishmeres ad beiker. Perek Tazayin Pasuk Chav Gimel. Says Rashi, what does limishmeres mean? L'gniza. So l'gniza, you're only putting it away till tomorrow morning. It fell double on Erev Shabbos, so you'll have the other half for Shabbos. So again, they're proving from Rashi that Rashi uses the Lashon gniza, even though it's temporary. So those that are for the Techeiles, they're not so enamored by the word nignaz. Big deal that the Medrash says it was nignaz. It could be that nignaz can also mean temporary. There's actually a Sifri, and this is very tough. The Sifri says in Dvarim Psikta Shin Nun Daled, it says that Rabbi Yossi was traveling to Tzur, and he found someone, and an old man, and he said, "What's your parnasa?" I guess they were schmoozing. He said, "What's your parnasa?" He says, "My parnasa is that I collect the chalazon." And so Rabbi Yossi said, "Is the chalazon still available?" So he said, "No. If there's spiders around it, and anyone who approaches it, the spider bites them and they die right away." So Rabbi Yossi said, you see that it's ganuz l'tzadikim la'asad lavai. Wow, it's beferish. Okay, ganuz, fine, but forget the word ganuz for a moment. It says it's ganuz l'tzadikim la'asad lavai. That very, very much sounds from the Sifri that it's gone forever. We're not going to get it back in Olam Hazeh. It's only going to be in Olam Haba. It really is a bomb kasha against the Techeiles. Those that answer, what do they say for this Sifri? So again, they say similar to what they said to the Arizal before. They said, wait a second, anyways you have to know, what in the world does this Sifri mean? What did he say? What's your parnasa? My parnasa is from the chalazon. Really? Is it available? No, not available. Anyone who goes near it dies. So wait a second, what? So what's your parnasa from? I don't understand. So if your parnasa is from that, so how could he say it's not available? Obviously it is available. So you have to know what it means. And also similar to what they said against Arizal, that not against Arizal, but just to explain that that's not what he meant. That what do you mean? It's Rabbi Yossi was a Tana. Rabbi Yossi was a Tana. The Amoraim had Techeiles. The Rabbanan Savroi had Techeiles. The Goinim, maybe even the Goinim, had Techeiles. So again, they're saying that the Sifri obviously doesn't mean literally, you can't take it at face value. In Sifrei Debei Rav from Rabbi David Pardo, who is also the author of the Chastei David on the Tosefta, he says, interesting that there's 3 types of chalazon. Some are hard to obtain, others are not, and they say that if it's not a raya, they feel from the Sifri. It's not a kasha from the Sifri, because anyways you have to know what the Sifri means. The truth is that there are many Rishonim and Paiskim and Achreinim that feel that the Techeiles could come back. They don't talk about the Merk Trunculus, but they say that the Techeiles could come back. The Maril, the Radvaz, the Eilas Tamid, the Chemdes Shloime, the Artzis Achayim, who's the Malbim, the Lavush, the Klei Chemda, they say that it's possible to return. They talk about, no, because if it returns, you assume that they all assumed that is that's possible to return. So that's how they get out of that. There is something that's very important to mention, and that is the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan in Siman Tes, Sif Yud Beis, he says that somebody, obviously he was talking about the Radzina Rebbe, that somebody said that he has the right Techeiles, and Eze Anoshim followed him, and there were people that even followed the followed this person in wearing Techeiles. He says, but the Gedolei Yisrael did not go with him, says the Aruch HaShulchan, nor did Klal Yisrael as a whole. They did not follow him. So he says, "V'nisbatal hadavar." So then the thing ended up being nisbatal. Ad shabo goyel tzedek b'meher b'yameinu amen. Says the Aruch HaShulchan that it was gone. It's going to be gone until ad shabo goyel tzedek. So those that ask kashas on the Techeiles, they say it's beferish in the Aruch HaShulchan that it's going to be gone until adbias goyel tzedek. So those that are okay, and I've listened to many shiurim, those that are for the Techeiles. I don't recall anybody ever bringing this Aruch HaShulchan. Maybe, I don't remember, it could be they did, but there's something they have to reckon with. I mean, the Aruch HaShulchan says that it's not coming back at Shabbat Go Tzedek. What could they possibly answer? So probably, I'm guessing, I don't know, probably the way they would get out of this Aruch HaShulchan, they're not going to want to say that, the Aruch HaShulchan's wrong. They're not going to want to say that, and I certainly would not accept such a thing. But they're probably going to say the Aruch HaShulchan didn't mean a haftacha. It was a prediction that it's probably not going to. The Radziner was wrong, says the Aruch HaShulchan. The Gedolim didn't follow him, and as a whole, and Klal Yisrael as a whole, and it's not going to be till Ad Goyel Tzedek. But it's a guarantee. It's a prediction, and he didn't think what's the chances of it coming back? I don't. Maybe. I don't know. I admit that's not a great answer. Again, I would love to see if I'm not going to go listen to all the shiurim again, but those that feel that the Techeiles is the right Techeiles, I would love to know what they do with that Aruch HaShulchan. Maybe that's the answer. That it's not like the Aruch HaShulchan was promising that it's never going to come back, and it's not. I don't know if the Aruch HaShulchan had Ruach HaKodesh or not. I have no idea. But he said it. But okay, it wasn't. It was a prediction, and it ends up we did find the right Techeiles. That's what probably that's how they feel. So that was question number 3. Question number 4. The reason I'm getting confused with the numbers is because I'm going out of order on my page. Question number 4 is an interesting sugya in general, and that is that there's a concept, as we know, of safek deraisa l'chumra. That whenever you have a safek about something, and it's a deraisa, so you have to be machmer. Go ahead and be machmer. I can't remember, did I hear shofar today or not? I don't know. So you got to be machmer, and maybe you won't make a bracha, but you got to be machmer, because maybe you didn't really hear the shofar today. Safek deraisa l'chumra. So there's a statement said over in the name of Rav Menachem Zemba. Supposedly he wrote a letter to his son in the Gur Aryeh Yehuda, and he said from his father, Rav Menachem Zemba, that there's a yisaid that if Safek Deraisa L'Chumra, so I'm going to go do it, because Safek Deraisa L'Chumra, but if when you do it, there's still a Safek, so then there's no point in then we don't say Safek Deraisa L'Chumra. Safek Deraisa L'Chumra is only that now you're going to go hear the shofar. Good, so now you mekayim the mitzvah. You know you blew the shofar. This time you know that you heard the shofar. So then you accomplish something. But if after you do it, anyways, it's still going to be a Safek, so then we don't say that klal of Safek Deraisa L'Chumra. They say this also in the name of the maybe the Reb Chaim, or maybe in the name of the Beis HaLevi. That's a reason why they say that there's no point in doing the Techeiles, because it's still not going to be positive, so what's the point? And there's no Safek Deraisa L'Chumra. So, a few things. First of all, those that feel that they're positive, they're going to claim it's not Safek Deraisa L'Chumra. They feel it's this is the right Techeiles. So okay, but let's put that aside for a moment. Let's say it's only 99%. It's only 50% chance. It's only 10% chance. Whatever. But Safek Deraisa L'Chumra. So, but what's going to be with this klal that you don't say Safek Deraisa L'Chumra? But 2 things. First of all, it makes no sense. This is what they claim. That why would you even say such a thing? Why? We don't believe that such a thing would be correct. Why would it be that you shouldn't go ahead and do it? Go ahead and do it. Maybe you didn't fulfill the deraisa, so do this now. Oh, but maybe still not. Okay, but it's better than nothing. The Shulchan Aruch says it's Mishnah Berurah Tafresh Nun Beis of Cotton Beis that brings from the Ran that let's say you didn't shake the lulav today. You didn't shake the lulav today, and now it's Bein Hashmashas. It's Bein Hashmashas. So quickly do it now. What do you mean? Maybe the day's over. Maybe it's already night. I don't know what to tell you. You might as well do it. You didn't shake lulav today, so you might as well go. Maybe it's still the night. Maybe it's too late. Okay, but maybe it's not. So you're not going to make a bracha during Bein Hashmashas. Fine, don't make a bracha. But at least you should do it. At least maybe you accomplished shaking the lulav. So you see from this Mishnah Berurah that even when you're still not positive that you did the mitzvah, but it's still better than nothing, you might as well go do it. And that makes sense. There's another Mishnah Berurah in Siman Lamates of Katan Chav Vav that says, let's say there's only one pair of tefillin in the whole shtetl, in the whole town there's only one pair of tefillin. And guess what? We're not even so sure that it's kosher. It may not be kosher, maybe it's kosher, maybe it's puzzle. No, should I put it on? Of course you should put it on, says the Mishnah Berurah. Why would you put it on? Maybe you don't make a bracha. But of course, it's better than nothing. You might as well put it on. At least you could get the mitzvah. It wouldn't make sense to say, no safek deraisa l'chumra if you're not positive anyways. Why? At least it's a better chance. Maybe I did the mitzvah. They try to bring a raya. This is what those that are for the Techeiles. They say that, you're going to bring a raya from a prima gadam. What's the prima gadam? Because there's a Magen Avram in Kuf Tzadi Dalet that says that let's say a person only knows one bracha of Birchas Hamazon. They only know one bracha. Should I say that one bracha? I don't know how to read the rest of them. I only know how to read this one. I only know this bracha by heart. So should I say it? So it's a suffix. If brachas ma'akvis zu is zu, so Zak the Magen Avram, don't say it. It's a suffix. Who knows? You may not even be Mekayim one of the brachas because maybe they're ma'akves zu is zu. So don't say it. So Zak the Even HaOizer, he argues that no, safek deraisa l'chumra. If you ate kedei svia, safek deraisa l'chumra. So you should say that one bracha. Zak the Prima Gadon, to defend the Magen Avram, no, the reason why the Magen Avram says not to is because since it's a suffix, even after you do the suffix, if you say that one bracha, you're still not positive that you fulfill the mitzvah of Birchas Hamazon because maybe brachas ma'ak v'zu azu. So therefore don't say that bracha because you're not positive that you're really fulfilling the mitzvah at all anyways. So you see, the Prima Gadam says such a yisaid that when Safek D'Oraisa L'Chumra, you don't say Safek D'Oraisa L'Chumra when you're not positive you're doing the mitzvah anyways. So those that want to say that no, that this is Techeiles is different is because that's at the expense of saying a bracha. If brachas ma'ak v'zu azu, so then you said one bracha for no reason. That's a bracha levatala. So misafek, you don't say it, says the Magen Avram. Explains the Prima Gadam. But by Techeiles, they claim you're not making a separate bracha on the Techeiles, right? You're just making the regular bracha on the tzitzis or on the talis. So it's not at the expense of a bracha. No, so safek deraisa l'chumra, even if it's only a suffix that this is the right Techeiles, whatever Techeiles we have nowadays, whether it's the Mir's Trunculus, the Cuttlefish, or whatever it is, so you might as well go ahead and do it. It don't make sense to say that, you're not positive anyways. Maybe yes, maybe no, maybe yes, but maybe yes. So you might as well go ahead and do it. So that was the fourth kasha, and that's the teretz that the other side says. The fifth kasha is, I'm going out of order of my notes. The fifth kasha, the Shulchan Aruch says, Siman Tes Sif Hey, that there's a rule, what's called Minknoff. Minknoff. It's based on a Gemara, of course, and there's a machlekes. What does that mean, Minknoff? That the strings have to be the same min as the beged, which means like this, that there's strings on the tzitzis, some are Techeiles, and some are white. We have to see the numbers exactly, we see that later. Those that aren't Techeiles should be, says the Shulchan Aruch, the same color as the beged, which means, let's say your beged of Dalet Kanfos is red. So the white strings should not be white, they should be red. If you're wearing a blue beged, so I'm not blue, let's keep it simple. If you're wearing a green beged, so the strings should be green. That's the way Rashi understands the Gemara, and that's what the Shulchan Aruch says. Comes the Ramah, and the Ramah goes with the other Rishayim and says, Ve'ein l'shanis. He says that no, it doesn't mean the color, it's not what it's talking about, it's talking about the material. That if your beged is wool, so then the strings should be wool. It's not talking about the color. Says the Mishnah Berurah that l'chadchila you should try to follow the Shulchan Aruch and always have the beged the same color as the strings. Your strings are going to be white. Have a white beged. You should l'chadchila try to be mekayim also the Shulchan Aruch. Certainly you have to be mekayim the Ramah that the strings and the beged should be the same, but you should also l'chadchila try to fulfill the din of the Shulchan Aruch. So those that go against the Techeiles nowadays, whatever the Techeiles is, but those that are against wearing Techeiles nowadays, they say, wait a second, you're going against the Shulchan Aruch, and the Mishnah Berurah says that l'chadchila you should try to fulfill the Shulchan Aruch, because the Shulchan Aruch said it's a din in the colors, and your beged is white, everybody has white begadim, and the strings are blue, so you're not accomplishing the the Minknoff according to the Shulchan Aruch. Now, besides the fact that, listen, the Shulchan Aruch is only a din lechatchila, the Mishnah Berurah comes out, at least for Ashkenazim, it's only a din lechatchila. This, you might be able to accomplish a mitzvah deraisa, if this Techeiles is the right Techeiles, fine, but they answer that, and they say even a better answer. The Chazon Ish says, and the Mishnah Berurah says this as well, Mishnah Berurah is in Sefkat and Yudalid, and the Chazon Ish says in Gimel Chav Hei, that this whole din of Minknoff is not by the strings that are Techeiles. It's by the strings that are not Techeiles. It's by the white strings. The white strings should be either the same color as the garment or the same material as the garment, but as the beged of Dalet Kanveis. But even according to Shulchan Aruch, it's the other strings that we're talking about. So says the Chazon Ish from Rishonim, and therefore it's not Akasha, they claim, because the blue strings could be the blue strings. The Minknoff is on the other strings, and that is white. They're both white, so they feel that, according to the Mishnah Berurah and the Chazon Ish, it's not a lack of Minknoff whatsoever. The last kasha in general on Techeiles is on what we just mentioned a moment ago, on the number of strings. How many strings, right? There's 8 strings times 4, there's 8 strings on each corner. How many of those are supposed to be blue? So the kasha that they ask is that you can't wear Techeiles nowadays, whatever the Techeiles is nowadays, you can't wear it. Because how are you supposed to decide how many strings? Which means, the Rambam holds that 1 out of 8 strings is blue. The Ravid, maybe there's different kirsas in the Ravid holds 2 out of 8 is blue, and Rashi and Tosfos hold, it's Rashi, Tosfos, the Rosh, the Mordechai, the Nemuki Yosef, and the Itter, they hold that 4 out of 8 is blue. So I've heard Talmidei Chachamim ask this kasha, that how are you supposed to know how many strings? You can't decide how many strings. You can't paskin how many strings. And then we don't have the power to paskin. We don't have the Techeiles to decide who's right. So therefore, you shouldn't wear Techeiles nowadays. That's a kasha. I heard, again, I did not speak to Rabbi Yashiv about this, but I heard that Rabbi Yashiv says that this is the strongest kasha against the Techeiles nowadays, against any Techeiles nowadays. Shamati. That's what I heard. The Rabbi Yashiv feels this is the strongest kasha. What do those that feel for the Techeiles, how do they answer this question? So, before we answer the question, you have to know what the kasha was. You just got to get it clear what the kasha is. There are 3 Beferish and Mishnah Berurahs that say that we paskin, that in the time, he doesn't say we paskin, he says, the Mishnah Berurah says in 3 places that the number of strings out of 8, 4 out of 8 are blue. Like Rav Rishonim. I'm saying the Ravid may not even say what he really says, he may not even say 2. But let's say the Rambam says 1. But we have Rav Rishonim, Rashi, Tosfos, the Rosh, the Mordechai, the Nemuki Yosef, the Itter, that say 4 out of 8. So the Mishnah Berurah says in 3 places, if you want to know where, it's in Siman Tes, Sefkat and Zayin, and Sefkat and Yud Dalid, and the Mishnah Berurah also in a 3rd place is Siman Yud Aleph, Sefkat and Nun Ches. So he says that 4 out of 8 is blue. So the Shulchan Aruch even says it. The Shulchan Aruch in Siman Yud Beis Sif Aleph goes with Rashi and Tosfos that it's 4 out of 8. So besides that, that's what the other side answers. That what do you mean? We don't have to paskin. The Mishnah Berurah and the Shulchan Aruch already paskin for us that it's 4 out of 8. But so much so that you have to know what the kasha was. If Rabbi Yashiv asked this question, he didn't miss 3 Beferish and Mishnah Berurahs and Shulchan Aruch. Talmidei Chachamim that asked this question, maybe they meant, how did the Shulchan Aruch know how to paskin? Or how did the Mishnah Berurah know how to paskin? How does the Mishnah Berurah have a right to decide? I don't know. I don't really understand such a question. But there's 3. The Mishnah Berurah makes it a business. In the Dirshu Mishnah Berurah, there's a period. New sentence. In the middle of a Sivkatan, a new sentence. In the times that they wore Techeiles, right? In the times of the Chavetz Chaim, they weren't wearing Techeiles. They didn't go with the Radziner. So, in the times when they wore Techeiles, they wore 4 out of 8 strings were blue and the other 4 were white. So, I don't know. So, you have to know exactly what the kasha was. Like, how are you supposed to paskin? The Mishnah Berurah paskins in 3 places. That's what they feel. Again, you have to know exactly what their kasha was. Maybe their kasha was Hagufa on the Mishnah Berurah. How did the Mishnah Berurah know to paskin like that? But they went with Rav Yishayim. So, that's what they answer. It's actually interesting. In the beginning of Parshas Kairach, it's very famous. There's a medrash that said, Kairach said that if you have a beged of Techeiles that's not Techeiles, and 4 strings patters it, Rashi says 4 strings patters it, so surely Kulei Techeiles, right? The silly Kal V'Chomer. So Rashi says 4. So either, I mean, it's Rashi l'shitase, right? Because Rashi said 4 out of 8 are blue. But the problem is that there is a girsa in Rashi in Parashas Kairach that doesn't say 4 out of 8. Rashi, some have the girsa of 1 out of 8. Interesting. So if Rashi in Chumash says 1 out of 8, so then. Yeah, I'm saying the Medrash says 4 out of 8. That if the Medrash means 4, like Rashi and Taisus, great. So that's Rashi and Taisus. According to the Rambam, what's he going to do with the Medrash? So the Rambam will say, no, 4 means 1, 1, 1, and 1 on each of the 4 corners. Rashi in Chumash is a stira, because Rashi quotes the Medrash and says 1. Sorry, Rashi says 1. So that's a stira in Rashi. But, Stam, that's interesting to know. But that's just, you'll notice that Rashi in next week's Parasha's Kairach. But that's those 6 kashas. Next, let's go a little bit faster. Another kasha. So there's questions on maybe specifically on the Murex trunculus. There's a Gemara above Mitzia, Samach Aleph and Bebeis, that says very strong, Hashem is going to pay back somebody who wears Clayelon and claims that it's Techeiles. Now, you're familiar with the Gemara that Clayelon is just from like an indigo plant, and it's very, very similar to the real Techeiles, similar in chemical compound, and it's very similar, and it's exactly the same in the color. So people, Techeiles is very expensive, the Gemara says. So Clayelon, I put on Clayelon, it's very cheap, and I'll tell her, I'm a big tzaddik, I'm wearing Techeiles, even I spend so much money. So you're tricking people. So Hashem is going to pay back against such people. And that's a simple pshat in the Gemara, that it means when you're tricking people. So that's not a kasha on people nowadays yet, because they're not trying to trick people. They're honestly trying to do the mitzvah. But the problem is, the kasha is that the Ben Ish Chai says, I heard this quoted in the Shear, I tried to find it, I didn't find it in Parashas Shlach. So if anybody out there knows where this Ben Ish Chai is, if you could do me a favor and email me, ekbris@gmail.com, just let me know, I just want to write the Mar Mokum. The Ben Ish Chai says that, why, this is the way I heard it quoted, that why did the Gemara say about Techeiles? Why did the Gemara say that if you hang up a mezuzah case on your door and you leave it empty and you trick people that you're trying to, really I have a mezuzah in there, and really you didn't spend any money on a mezuzah, all you did was spend money on a plastic mezuzah case, so that's terrible. Why did the Gemara say anything about Techeiles, or specifically Techeiles? So Dr. Ben Ish Chai, that no, Al Pi Kabbalah, it's the color of Techeiles has an achiza to the Sitra Achra. Terrible inyanim, and the only exception is the actual Techeiles, Zelu Umazeh. And therefore, so if it's the actual Techeiles, wonderful. But if it's not the actual Techeiles, then you're adding the koyach to the Sitra Achra. So if you're right, okay. But if you're wrong, now those that feel that it's for sure right, so they're not going to be bothered by this. But let's say someone feels that, the rayas might be good, maybe it's a suffix at least. So, but if you're wrong, you're adding koyach to the Sitra Achra. So therefore, it's better to just to stay away. Now, a bomb kasha, it's taking a big risk. So a couple of things. First of all, the Marshal over there understands to answer. The Marshal over there understands Taisvis, and that's the way the Rosh says it beferish, that we're not talking about someone wearing Techeiles. We're talking specifically about somebody who sells Techeiles to try to rip people off. Really, you're selling Clayelon and you're ripping people off. Like the previous cases in the Gemara. The Gemara says ribis and not honest weights. That you're trying to trick people and you're stealing money from people against halacha. So to this, you're trying to get money out of people against halacha. That's the way the Marshal understands Taisvis, and that's the way the Rosh explains. According to that, there's no kasha. We're not talking about somebody who's wearing Techeiles. So the Gemara is a terrible thing against people that are trying to trick against them. Maybe it's still a kasha for the Ben Ish Chai and a Chanami. The Marshal understands Taisvis that it's talking about wearing Techeiles. Fine, that it's terrible things. But I would imagine that they would answer, and I think I've heard that this is what they answer. If you don't like the answer, then gesundheit, fine. But their answer is, and it's hard to know with the Kabbalah and Yanim, that they can't accept that somebody who wants to do a mitzvah, I'm trying to do the mitzvah, this might be the real Techeiles. Maybe yes, maybe no. So If it's the right Techeiles, gewaldig, a mitzvah deraisa. If it's the wrong Techeiles, so it's not like I'm trying to trick people. I'm trying to try to be Mekayim a mitzvah. Okay, unfortunately I was wrong. I thought that I was right, but unfortunately I was wrong. That gives koyach to the Yetzer Hara. The Satan, I know the Satan doesn't always play fairly, but Hashem's going to make a koyach to the Satan when I was trying honestly to do a mitzvah. I wasn't trying to trick people. They're talking about when you're trying to trick people, they would answer. Okay, but that's another kasha. That's a kasha on using the Techeiles. If it's wrong, you're playing with fire, you're playing with the Sitra Achra, and the answer would be that no, that's only if you're doing it, for bad purposes, when you know it's wrong, but if you're thinking maybe it's right, then maybe not. Good. It's hard for me to understand, fully Kabbalah and Yanim with the Sitra Achra, but that's, again, a kasha and a teretz. Next, the Gemara Menachas, Mem Dalar Mer Aleph. The Gemara says, Chilazain ze is gufay doime layam. The gufay is doime layam. It says also that briasai is doime ledog. Briasai is doime ledog. So two things. This chilazain is doime layam. It's similar to the water. So what does that mean? Rashi and the Rebbeinu Gershom say that it's the color. May you look a few lines before that. Techeiles doime layam. So that's it's talking about the color. So to over here, the briasai is doime layam. Now, the Murex trunculus is brownish, whitish. It's not really the color of the yam. So this is a kasha on the Murex trunculus. How could the Gemara say, if the Murex trunculus is really the right chilazin, what does that mean that the color is daim yam? The yam is blue, and the gufay of the Murex trunculus is not blue, it's brownish whitish. So what do they answer? So the answer that they give is that the bottom of the ocean has algae, and sometimes it's greenish, brownish, bluish, it's different ichi colors, and the murex is covered with algae, and it's hard to clean off. They bring sources, the Ramban and Chumash, I think Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky has something on this, that yam always means the ocean floor, what's called the seabed on the bottom. So that blends into the ocean floor, and that's what it means that the gufay is doime layam. It's similar to the yam that you go down scuba diving and trying to find it. So it's similar to the yam because of all the dirt and the algae and all the stuff that is covering it. So I guess those that have the kasha on it, they feel that that's not gufay. The fact that it's covered by a davar mibachutz on the outside, that the algae, that doesn't sound like the word gufay. Gufay sounds like the actual guf of the Murex trunculus. So it's not so geshmak to understand that that's going on the algae. But usually it's referring to the actual body of the creature. So that's a kasha and a possible teretz. Another kasha is the next line of the Gemara. Briasai doime ledag. Now, why does it say briasai doime ledag? Just say it's a dag. So the teretz says it's not a dog. It's not a fish. It's doime ledag. And they ask, what do you mean? If it's a snail, right? Rashi and other Rishonim say that the chilazin is a snail. So whatever the chilazin is, but it's a snail. They say, many Rishonim say. So how is that the shape? How is it daima ledag? How is a snail daima to dag? So different answers. One answer is that if you look at the picture of a snail sideways, right? You put it sideways, it looks like the shape, like it's like a fish. It's narrow at the end, and then fatter in the middle, and then again it comes narrow at the end. If you look at it like one dimensional, there's an Even Ezra in Tehillim Nun Ches Tes Shablul, which is a snail, V'hu Kidmus Dog, which is mamish like the lashon of the Gemara, Kidmus Dog, Doime Ledog. So and that's a shablul, which is a snail, which is a similar type of snail. So they say that that's how it answers Briyasei Doime Ledag. The question was, how in the world is a snail Doime Ledag? The anatomy, so their answering is that no, exactly, the snail is the shape of a fish. The Gemara over there says, another kasha, the Gemara says that it comes once every 70 years. It comes up the ocean once every 70 years. That's not true for the Murex trunculus. It doesn't come up once every 70 years. So how could you claim that the Murex trunculus is the right Techeiles? So the answer that the Radvaz says that nowadays really comes up more often. It was only in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. It was a miraculous event that once every 70 years it comes up. I saw another teretz, and I saw this even in the Art Scroll Gemara 44a footnote 5 that answers that it just means that doesn't mean that it's not attainable only once every 70 years. All it means is that once every 70 years it would swarm out of the water onto the land, and at that time they would be easily attainable in abundance, and it's more difficult to get in the other times. The Art Scroll brought it from the Sfunei Temunei Chol. I'm pretty sure that's the Radzina Rebbe's Sefer. And anyways, in Masechta Tzitzis it says every 7 years, not every 70 years. Fine, but that's a teretz. That it doesn't mean that it only comes once every 70 years, and maybe even there there's a miraculous event that only took place in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. I don't know. You got to see. Maybe is that what the Arizal was talking about? I don't know. But it doesn't mean that it's not attainable any other time. But again, that's Akasha from that line in the Gemara and the teretz that they say. Another kasha, almost finished. Another kasha. The Gemara says in Shabbos, ayin. Which one goes first? We'll do tzad. The Gemara says, and ayin hey amar aleph. The Gemara says hatzad chilazain, that if you trap a chilazain upaitseya chayev achas, you're only chayev one. You're not chayev for paitseya. You're only chayev for tzad. Rabbi Yehuda says you're also chayev for disha, for dash, and therefore you're chayev two, because psia is a tolda of dash, says the Ritva. So you're chayev for tzad and you're chayev for dash. So the kasha on the Murex trunculus, or maybe it's really on any type of snail, is the following. How could it be that you're chayev for tzad? Chayev means chayev deraisa, and that's where tzad was in the Mishkan. So how could it be? The Gemara in Shabbos Daf Kuvav says that if you have an old animal, a crippled animal, a deer that has, a broken leg. Yesterday I was driving in West Orange to check a baby, and there was a deer, mamish, like in the middle of like a highway, like a street. Mamish, I don't know if there's so many forests over there, but you have a deer with a broken leg running around, and then you catch it, so it's slow moving, because it's a zakein, it's very old, or it's crippled, and then, says the Gemara, you're not chayiv it's seida, because it's nitzud v'ayimid, it's already trapped. It goes so slowly, so it's already trapped. So how in the world can the Gemara say that you're chayiv it's tzad by the chilazain, if it's a slow-moving creature, it's a snail, after all. So how could it be that you're chayiv for tzad? Now, I'm not so positive that this is a question only on the Murex trunculus. Really, any snail that it would be. Now, maybe the cuttlefish is not a snail, so fine, that would be understandable, because it swims around. But any of the Rishonim that say it's a snail, the Gemara says chilazain is tzad. So how could it be that you're chayav midaraisa for tzad? By the Shemona Shratzim in Parasha Shmini, it says one of them is a chaymet. Rashi in Chagiga Yud Aleph Amar Aleph and Rashi in Chumash says it's a limtza, a snail. So you see, Rashi holds that there is shayach tzeda on a snail. So what's pshat? So you could check on Torah Anytime my shiurim on the malacha of tzad. It's a big difference. Let's say there's a snail. Forget Techeiles for a second. There's a snail, a slug, on your sidewalk, and you pick it up on Shabbos. Okay, forget the muksa problem for a moment. You pick it up on Shabbos. What's that? So some say that that's mutter, because it's a slow-moving creature. Some say that's aseh midaraisa. Wait a second. I think Reb Nissen Karel, it's in the Dush Mishnah they bring, and I think Reb Shlomo Zalman says it's aseh midarabanan. Wait a second. It's not a moving creature. It's a slow-moving creature. But the answer is pashit. The answer is pashit in regards to that the Mishnah didn't say that. All the Gemara said was, you have an animal that usually runs fast, and now it's old, so it's running slow. There's no chiyuv deraisa of tzeda. But you have a snail on the sidewalk, that could be deraisa, it could be mutter, could be derabanan, could be asa deraisa. That's three machlekes in the Paiskim. You could check the Dirshu Mishnah in Shin Tezayin. So So you see that it's shaykh to be deraisa, even by a slow-moving creature. The Gemara was talking about a fast-moving creature that now is slow because it's crippled. So it's possible to have chiyav deraisa on a slow-moving creature. The Taizarid in Chagiga asks on Rashi, how can it be that a snail, it's nitzud v'aymed? Good, so he argues on Rashi that a chaymet is really something else. So l'chayr, that Seidah wouldn't work, at least for the Taizarid, but the answer to the question, Bekitzer, what the other side answers for Tzeda, is a tremendous difference. Even if you have a snail, and you say that's totally mutter, this is on the bottom of the ocean. It's tough to get. It's not easy. You don't just bend down on the sidewalk and pick it up. You have to go get the chilazim. The historians talk about, at least by the Mirks Trunculus, how they had to get it, and they had to get nets. Anytime you got to do tatztaki, you got to do tricks, you got to do tachbulois to get something, to get an animal, to get a creature, that's considered Seidah. It's not a kasha they claim, from a snail on the sidewalk, or from a deer that's crippled. You could just go over to the deer and take it. This, you have to go put on some bathing suit and scuba diver gear and go get it, or you get nets and you start catching them. That is shaykh to be tzeda. In Be'ach of Dalar Mar Aleph, what's tzeda? Kol she'omer havei mitzuda v'nitzaydu. Rashi explains, you need tachbulois l'chaptzai. So this is tachbulois l'chaptzai. I one time heard a tremendous Talmud Chacham bashing the Techeiles nowadays, and he said, there's no tzeda. How is it possible to be tzeda? He says, I'll prove it to you. He says, let's say your child is playing ball on Shabbos, and there's a ball, and it gets stuck in the bushes, but it's right there. So you grab the ball. So there's no tzeda on that, right? So you see that if something's right in front of you, and it's a slow-moving creature, there's no tzeda. And I pressed rewind to make sure that I heard him correctly, that this tzeda, it's shaykh to be tzeda on a ball. I don't know, tzeida's on an animal. I'm saying maybe a person is a machlekes, but about an animal. So I'm not sure, I'm not sure, but he was very, very against the Techeiles, and this was one of his kashas, that it's not shaykh tzeda, but this is the answer that they give, that it's very different from that animal that's sitting there on the sidewalk, or a deer that's crippled or old. This is, you have to go get nets, and you got to do tachbulois to go ahead and get it. So then maybe really, it is shaykh tzeda. Another malacha that the Gemara says is that it's shaykh to have dash or tzeveya. Tzeveya, right? You take the Techeiles and you dye the wools. So you dye the tzitzis, or whatever, in the times of the Mishkan, not the tzitzis, in the curtains. Or dash. What is the shear for dash and for tzeveya? So disha by Eichlin is a gregris, that's a Rambam in Shabbos Ches Zayin. By tzeveya, what's the shear? So kumalei hasit hapul, kumalei hasit kaful. The Rambam says that's 4 tfachim, Rashi says that's 2 tfachim, but the dye of the Mirks Trunculus does not produce so much dye. It's hard to imagine that you'll get that much dye in the Mirks Trunculus. And the Gemara says chayav achas. So it seems that it's going by one snail that you catch, one of those chilazin, and it says that you're chayav for disha. Disha, for Peitzei, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's less than a gregris. How could you be chayav for tzeveya? It's less than 4 tfachim or 2 tfachim, so that's another bomb kasha on the Techeiles, because how's it shaykh that the Gemara says you're chayav for disha? How's it shaykh that the Gemara says that you're chayav for tzeveya? What teretz does the other side give? So they give the following answer, that they say that the shear is a gregris, the shear is kamalei hasid kafel, but basically it means a choshev shear. For food, that is a choshev shear. But sometimes, if something is very expensive, like the Gemara says, Damav Yikarim, that the Techeiles is expensive, the Chilazin, whatever it is expensive, so then even a tiny bit can be considered choshev. And you find such a thing by Hoitzah. The Ravid says it by Hoitzah. The Ravid over there in Shabbos Ches Zayin, he says that even less than a gregris is shaykh to be chayav for Hoitzah. And it's also the Avnei Nezer, and the shear of dash is learned out from Hoitzah. It's learned out from Haitzah. That's Shabbos Ayin Vav Amid Beis, Tosfos Ritva, Ramban Meiri. So dash is learned out from Haitzah, and the Magen Avos, the Maram Banet, says this, that it's shaykh by the other malachas also to be chayiv even for less than that, according to these Rishonim. And therefore, And therefore it's shaykh even by a smaller amount, because this is very, very different. This is not a fig, this is not a date, this is not a toothpick, this is something that's very, very expensive. So it's choshev, and in itself, it's shaykh to be even less than that. The Kesef Mishnah on the Rambam says that a gregus is a choshev amount. So these Rishonim are tining, the Ravid by Haitzah is saying, and it's based on that therefore it's shaykh even less than that shear by Dush and by Tseveya. Another malacha, Shabbos Ayin Dalad Amabeis, is a question on the Mirix Trunculus, because it says Kosher b'Mishkan Heichen Hava. Where was Kosher? So it says by the Tzadei Chalazon, they would trap the Chalazon. Rashi says they would need nets to trap the Techeiles. If the nets rip, so you have to tie a knot to fix it. A net. So they ask, I heard a Talmud Chacham on Torah Anytime ask this, that a net is used to catch fish, not a snail. You don't use nets to catch snails. He says you would use wicker baskets. I'm not sure how this Talmud Chacham knows about wicker baskets and snails and things like that, but he says that he sounded very positive that to catch snails they don't use nets, they use wicker baskets. So, okay. What do they answer for that? So the other side, those that feel that Techeiles, the Mirix Trunculus, is the right Techeiles, they answer that everybody quotes Pliny the Elder. Pliny the Elder. It's like quoted 1,000,000 times. Every shear you'll listen to on Techeiles quotes Pliny the Elder. He writes that they use nets for the Mirix Trunculus. That's what he documents, that they did use nets to catch the Mirix Trunculus. I don't know about the wicker baskets. Maybe it's because it was deeper in the water, so wicker baskets wouldn't work. I'm not even sure what a wicker basket is. But they use nets. At least that's what's documented. I have no idea personally, but that's what they bring from Pliny the Elder. And if that's true, then there's your answer right there. That maybe that's what the Gemara meant. They use nets in the times Pliny the Elder claimed they used nets. So maybe in the times of the Gemara, in times of the Mishkan, also they used nets. Two more kashas, and then I'll let you go. Akasha is, they asked, there's a rule, what's called min hamuter beficha. The Divrei Yoel asked this. That usually there's a din of min hamuter beficha. Shabbos chav ches amar aleph. So the chilazon is not kosher. We know that, obviously. So how could you use that for a mitzvah? You could only use something for a mitzvah if it's kosher. So the Samar Rebbe says that the Techeiles is supposed to remind you of the Yam and the Rikia and the Kisei HaKavod, like the Gemara says. And by the Kisei HaKavod, there's a lion and an eagle. Those are not kosher. So he says, so we go with the rules of the Kisei HaKavod. You go with the rules of Kisei HaKavod, because it's true, nothing to do with the Mirix Trunculus for a second. Whatever it is, a snail, the cuttlefish, I don't know, it's all not kosher. So Zok the Samar Rebbe, don't worry about it, it's not kosher. Because it's like the Kisei HaKavod. So it goes with the rules of the Kisei HaKavod. But he says that's gufa why we don't need Techeiles nowadays. Because the Gemara in Brachas Nafnun Tes says that from when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Loi nira harakia b'tarasai, we never have the true blue in the rakia, so you don't need the Techeiles, because it's to remind us of the rakia. But we don't have the true rakia nowadays, so then you don't have to have it. It says, Sheshanis Yaakov Tzahalav V'Samecha B'Reisim Yachad Techeiles Mordechai. We'll all be happy when they see the Techeiles Mordechai, because it's only important when we have the Beis HaMikdash. So when you see the Techeiles, it must be the Schalta de Geula, when we get the right Techeiles, but you don't need the right Techeiles nowadays, says the Divrei Yoel in Chelik Aleph Siman Mem Dalet. So it's a Bam Kasha. What's going to be with Min Hamuter B'Ficha? How could you use that for nowadays, for Techeiles? There's no Beis HaMikdash nowadays. So I just realized, anyways, if it was in the times of the Amoraim and the Rabbanan Savroi and maybe the Go'ainim, so whatever, evidently we do use it, even not by the Beis HaMikdash. But the answer, based on the Chassam Sofer and the Neidib Yehuda, that's only when it's the actual mitzvah. The actual mitzvah, then it needs to be something kosher. But if it's just a dye to color the strings, mechatesi, there you don't need to have it that it's min hamuter b'ficha. Only when it's the actual mitzvah itself do we find such a concept, but not when it's just a color in for the mitzvah. That's their teretz. The last question we'll ask is the Rambam. The Rambam says that Rambam is in Tzitzis, Beis. He says, V'damai, the blood. They say that, how could it be blood? It's not by the Mirix Trunculus, it's not the blood. So they say that blood doesn't have to mean blood as what you and I know as blood. It means any liquid that comes from it, and they bring many psukim to that. I didn't write sources on that, but the Rambam says, V'damai shachar kedyoy. It's black like ink. the Murex trunculus is not black like ink, it's blue. So it's not black like ink. How could they say, how could the Murex trunculus be the right one? So this kasha, I'm just not 100% sure. Stamazay, didn't the Gemara said it's Daimlyam Rekia? So okay, there's a Rashi at the end of Shlach that the Rekia means La'es Erev, when it's getting dark, but it says Daimlyam. The Techeiles is Daimlyam. The color is similar to the water. So Stamazay, what does the Rambam mean? V'damai shachar k'dyoy. It's black like ink. I don't know. I never really got a good answer to this. Forget the Murex trunculus for a second. Whatever the Techeiles is, whatever the Chilozin is, the Gemara says it's similar to the Yam. The Rambam says it's Shachar K'dyai. So I don't know. But the answer that no, if the Murex trunculus, when you break it out, it turns yellow and then it turns dark purple. So that's what the Rambam means by black. It's true that the Murex trunculus turns a black, dark purple. In Pliny over there, it says he describes the Murex as inclining to black. Also, Aristotle describes the Murex as dark to blackness. So you see that no, they also did describe the Murex similar to black. So that's Pshat in the Rambam. So that's how they answer. But I still don't know the answer exactly to Daimlyam. But that's the 14th kasha. Okay, I hope everybody enjoyed. Everybody should, learn the sugi themselves. Go in. There's more kashas, more terutzim, and Bez Hashem. Hopefully, it is the Aschalta de Geula, whether we have the Techeiles or not. Whatever it is, a bracha to all of us that we should have the Geula, Meir Rabbi Yameinu, and we'll all be taught the emes. I've always thought it's going to be so interesting when Mashiach comes and Mashiach tells us, or Eliyahu Navi, or I don't know who, Hashem tells us whether the Murex trunculus is the right Techeiles or not. Whatever the answer is going to be, a whole group of people are going to be very embarrassed, and a whole group of people are going to say, see, I told you so. So whether it's yes or no, because there are people that are against it, it's wrong, and there are people that know it's right. I don't know. I don't see how they both could be correct. One of them is right, and one of them is very right, and one of them is very wrong. I heard a Talmid Chacham give a Shear, and he said, watch, you'll see, it's going to be just a matter of time that everyone's going to wear Techeiles, because the proofs are so good, and you'll see everybody's going to catch on, and everybody's going to do it. I disagree with that prediction. I don't think everybody's going to start doing it. There's always going to be people that are against it. But Bez Hashem, Mashiach should come, and we'll all know the emes. Okay, everyone should have a good Shabbos.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.